We're going to move now into our next keynote speaker for the day, and that will be Kevin Schaefer, and we'll be speaking about universal design for learning. So, Kevin, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. And I have to tell you, right off the bat, that I'm intimidated being here. My background is special education. I was a special ed teacher. Yay! Yay, special education! I taught for many, many years, self-contained classrooms. My experience with pre-K through second grade, I taught a self-contained class of kindergartners through second graders for 3 years. And it is probably the 3 years that I learned most about teaching. There were students who were non-communicative. There were students with autism. There were students with emotional disturbance. There were students with mental health issues. So when we talk about universal design for learning, we are truly talking about access and equity for all students to be educated with their typically developing peers. That is the whole purpose of this presentation. How do we open up access and equity for all students such that they're able to progress through our educational system and their post-secondary outcomes are increased? And many times it is our structures in education that are the barriers. When we think of universal design for learning, we are looking to identify what those potential barriers are in our instruction, in our organization, that prohibit students from being successful. We are then unable to map from pre-K through the age of 22 for students to earn a living wage. And that's what we're going to talk about today, is how do we map such that students have access, there is equity, and we are mapping to a living wage. That is our goal. So even though we are early math, we're going to at least start this presentation with a focus on college and career. What are we doing in our classrooms, pre-K through second, third grade? What are we doing to prepare students to be successful when they leave our educational system? So that's how we're going to start the day. And then we're going to move into universal design for learning. My passion. Yours too? So if it seems at any point during this presentation that I'm yelling at you, I'm not yelling. I'm passionate about the subject, okay? Since I was a teacher, I became an administrator, and I have to tell you, being an administrator and being in so many classes, I was able, through Universal Design for Learning, which has been around since the 90s, walk in a classroom and immediately be able to identify potential barriers in the lesson objective, in the assessment process. What about the methods that the teacher's using, and those methods being the actual barrier for students to understand the content? I heard a lot today about materials, manipulatives. Is it possible that the materials and the manipulatives that we choose to teach students to reach that lesson objective, could those materials and manipulatives be the barrier for students to actually be successful? So that is the basis of UDL. It's identifying potential barriers such that students don't have equal access or equity. Any questions? Are you in the right keynote? Okay, good. I just want to make sure everyone's where they're supposed to be. You can't do a presentation on universal design for learning without providing multiple options for participants to access the information. So in your folder, you have the PowerPoint. And because I'm still a teacher, I couldn't leave well enough alone. So I also created a note-taking guide for you. There are some of you that like to go slide by slide. There are some of you that just give me the finer points. And I want to go along in my note-taking guide. That works too. I will also give you a link to a Padlet. How many of you have used Padlets? Padlet, P-A-D-L-E-T. Padlet is my favorite piece of tech. They are going to charge you, but I'm going to come back to that. So a Padlet is like a poster board where you can put resources. So I've created a Padlet. I will give you the link. If you have a computer or an iPhone, you can go to that link. You can also find an electronic version of the PowerPoint and the note-taking guide, and about 1 million, literally 1 million resources that you can use at any point. As long as you have the link, you can access the resources. But we'll get there in a second. Okay, I think we're ready to go. Any questions? Quick raise of hands. How many of you have heard of UDL prior to me just mentioning it? Okay, that's pretty good. I always worry when the audience has more information and knowledge than I do. So I think we're good. So if you're using the note-taking guide, if there wasn't one on your table, just raise your hand, we have extras. If you're using the note-taking guide, I just kind of pulled out the major points where you might need to reference taking notes, or during some of the activities, you may want to reference. Here's the link to the Padlet. So I'm going to give you a minute. Go ahead and write it down. There are resources that are specific to math. There are resources that also involve access and equity. There are links. There are Word documents. And if I do say so myself, it is one of the most amazing resources you will leave here with today. And I'm going to check as you're walking out, is this truly the best resource? Actually, I have a couple. So the Padlet, download any of the information you want. And someone asked, are they going to charge us for Padlets? Because it is so popular over the past few years, they are. You get 3 free. You get 3 free Padlets. So I've created probably 150 Padlets. That means I get 153. You get 3 more than you've already created, okay? Everybody good with the Padlet? Okay, and I don't mind if you are on your iPhones or your computers looking up information, as long as every once in a while you look up and give me a head nod and a smile, it'll work out better for all of us. Okay, let's get started. So we're going to start off with access and equity. The access and equity piece is really the foundation for what UDL is based on. My first 3 years of teaching, so full disclosure, I'm a farm boy from Southern Illinois. Sounds like the start of a country song, right? Belleville, Illinois. So my first 3 years of teaching was actually in North St. Louis County. It's the district next to Ferguson, Missouri. Those 3 years teaching middle school special education taught me the importance of self-reflection, not just self-reflection on my teaching practices, self-reflection on my prejudice, my bias, my unintentional discriminatory practices. And I can tell you, that is one of the most difficult processes to go through as an educator, to say to yourself, I cannot teach the students sitting before me the way I learned. Their experiences are different. And here's what I had to realize. I was creating barriers for my students because I lowered my standards based on my bias on the way they spoke. Because I lowered my standards, I was never going to get them where they needed to be. My bias, my prejudice, my discriminatory practices were their barrier. Until, as an educator, I understood what the differences were in my experience in education and my students' experience in education. And through understanding their families, through empathy interviews, through visits, I was the barrier to their access and equity. It's difficult. It's really, really hard. But when we talk about universal design for learning, we're not just talking about activities. We're not just talking about strategies. We're talking about our role as an educator and ensuring that all of our students have access. And we're providing that context for them. Okay. Favorite slide of all. I'll say that probably 10 times before the end of the presentation. Educational equity is a civil rights issue of our generation. Universal design for learning, the framework of universal design for learning, I don't care if you call it UDL, call it whatever you want. But in order for students to have access to their education, we have to understand it is an equity issue. We have to take all of these qualities into consideration. And I'll leave it at that. So this is really hard for me right now. I'm gonna have you get up. And you know, as a teacher, sometimes it's hard for me to let loose of control. This is one of those situations. So here's what I'd like you to do. If you're using your note-taking guide, there's a space for you to write down your thoughts. I'd like you to take 30 seconds, and I'd like you to answer a very specific prompt, okay? You're gonna get up. You're going to find somebody that you don't know. You're going to introduce yourself, and you're going to decide not if you're person A or B. You're going to decide if you are awesome or if you're terrific. Okay? Figure that out with your pair. Say, I am Kevin Schaefer, and I am awesome. You are such and such. You are terrific. Okay? And then you're going to share your thoughts that you're going to take about 30 seconds to write down. So here's your prompt. In my opinion, the #1 quality of a student who is college and career ready is blank. Because blank. Take about 30 seconds. Write down your answer if you like. About 10 more seconds. Okay, from what I could tell from that lunch, everybody would like to probably walk off a few calories, right? So if you would stand up, find somebody in the room that you don't know, and I would like partner A, or awesome, to share first, and partner terrific to share second. Everybody up? When you see my hand raised, come back together. Yeah, I get up, go, go, go. Go, go, go. Okay, thank you. So I would like to hear back some of the adjectives that you came up with. Raise your hand. Raise your hand if you're awesome. All right, so if you were awesome, throw out an adjective that you came up with. Eager. What? What? Oh, eager. What else? Say it one more time. Confident. Creative, motivated. What is it? Open-minded. Grit. I love the grit. One more. What is it? Problem solver. Okay, raise your hand if you're terrific. If you're terrific, get your hands up. What adjectives did you come up with? Self-directed, passionate, perseverance. How about this side? Determined. What else? Growth mindset. Another good one. So here's the thing about this activity. This is the crazy thing. I've done this activity every single time I do this presentation. So probably thousands of people, maybe 200. There's one answer I've never gotten. There is one answer I have never heard. Can you think of what that might be? What is it? Determined? Happy? I think I got happy. I heard a couple places. I've never heard smart or academically proficient. Don't leave here today saying Kevin Schaefer does not value or think academic proficiency is important, because I do. In order to get there, though, there are qualities of students that we think of, we see, that will assist them in being successful in college and career. The way we teach those skills in preschool, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, all the way up, the way we teach those skills will help assist the students in being successful beyond the academic piece. They go hand in hand. Universal design for learning looks at that social emotional piece that you described through one of the principles. The other two principles that we'll get at talk about the way we teach students or represent information and the way we allow for students to express their knowledge and understanding of the concepts we're trying to teach. So it's full circle, communication cycle is what we're talking about. So thank you for participating. I appreciate it. It makes me a little bit nervous. I wanted to put up the California College and Career Readiness Standards. Take a look. Study the underlined words. Do you notice anything interesting about the activity we just did and how we're defining college and career readiness? My second question to that is, what does the teaching of these skills look like in your classroom? Raise your hand if you teach these skills. I think just about every hand is going to go up. These are the skills that you teach. What we have to make a priority or bring to the surface is the fact that we're not just teaching academics. We are teaching a broader circle of social emotional learning around the academics that allow students to access the information. Okay? So we're going to watch a video. It is my favorite video of all time. What you'll see, and if you look on your note-taking guide, you will see these 4 questions. So they're in grayscale, I think, across the center of your page. You can take notes. I would like for you to look for these 4 bullets as you watch the 2.5-minute video. And what I want you to understand is that, and somebody asked me earlier, what were you talking about when you say access and equity? We'll talk about it after we watch the video, okay? Take notes and we'll discuss.
A unique dining experience has just reached Canada. You can find it at a restaurant in downtown Toronto. It's different because the menu not only caters to the taste buds, it also speaks a language of food you won't hear anywhere else. Joanna Remiliotis explains.
The menus are ready, the sliders ready to grill, the staff dressed and ready to go. Opening night of a brand new restaurant in town, where the goal of the evening is to have your order fall on deaf ears. Yep, you heard that right.
This is Canada's first restaurant staffed with deaf waiters and waitresses.
But in terms of an idea, how...
This is the first one of its kind.
Aptly named Signs, this is a place where you have to follow the signs. Customers are asked to order food and drink using American Sign Language. There are icons next to every menu item and a cheat sheet to help.
Oh yeah, red something and then beet and then, watermelon.
And what does that
mean? Red beet watermelon salad.
I think I'm gonna have the duck.
What's that?
Sign it.
Duck.
Yeah, you're gonna have to sign that.
I think it's like this and like this.
Exciting.
Anjan Manikumar wanted to deliver a whole new dining experience and give deaf people a chance to shine.
Providing them an opportunity here, I think, is something that they deserve, and they are very talented. Every one of them, every one of my staff, I'm very happy to say they are extremely talented.
More than 200 deaf people applied to work here. Most of the 50 or so who made the cut have no restaurant experience, but a passion to learn.
Giving the deaf community opportunity to work in a workforce that they wouldn't otherwise be able to work in. And it's opening up a whole new workforce for the deaf community.
This is Mehdi Safavi's first full-time job. An interpreter helped us ask him how that feels.
It's wonderful. I'm so excited to be here. It's a deaf environment where hearing people can come in and experience our world and our culture. So it's really amazing, really amazing. And it's a challenge for me, but a great challenge.
It's brand new, but already there's a buzz and reservations are pouring in.
Your biggest problem right now is that you have too much business?
I might have too much business.
And all through an entirely different word of mouth. Joanna Bermiliotis, CBC News, Toronto.
Awesome, right? What I'd like you to do at your table is have a conversation. You can talk about those four bullet points as a reference, but at the very least, I'd like you to have a conversation about the similarities and differences between our educational environment and Signs Restaurant. I'll give you a hint, okay, to get you started. Silence makes me a little nervous. For me, the customers, pardon me? Oh, thank you, Zachary. So for me, the thought that comes out of that video is the customers, by virtue of stepping foot through the door, became disabled. It was the environment that disabled them. The mode of communication, the power mode of communication changed when they walked into the restaurant. Therefore, those that were deaf, that were typically excluded, they had to change the way they communicated. The customers, by stepping through the door of a new context, now didn't have access to food unless they had a mode of communication. In order to access, we had to provide supports to get them there, okay? I want you to have that conversation at your table. How is our educational environment similar and different to Signs Restaurant, okay? Take about 90 seconds, 2 minutes to do that. All right, let's come back together as a whole group. Help me. Thank you. So, who would like to share? Pause. Yeah. So there was a switching of roles. The customers were the students, and the waiters and waitresses became the teachers. What else did you notice? Yeah, and then you. So think about our classrooms. The customers didn't know the communication, so they needed supports, they needed visuals, they needed directions. What about our English learners? What about our students with disabilities who don't have expressive communication? What about our students with learning disabilities who have expressive language concerns? Think about our students with autism. Think about our students that don't have experience with the content that I'm trying to teach. That is also a communication barrier. Yeah, you had a comment.
I was just going to say, they didn't open their doors for hearing impaired people. They opened it for everybody. Let them into their world, see what they deal with, so we can be more passionate.
So they opened the door to all individuals. Did you notice on that same note, did you hear that one of the waiters, it was their first full-time job? So here's my question to that point. Did the waiter all of a sudden develop the skills in order to get the job? He always had the skill. He needed an environment that allowed for his difference. That's what we're talking about with universal design for learning. That's the access piece. That waiter now has access to a living wage. See how we're trying to make the connections there? Yeah. Great comment. What she said was, think about a deaf person going into the restaurant. Their transition is seamless, right? Now they need no accommodation. Think about students who walk onto our campuses. Think about students who walk into our classrooms that experience the same thing as the customers did in this situation. Did you also know about notice the feel of the restaurant? There was an atmosphere of learning. And I've heard a number of times today from both John and Zachary, safe environment. A safe environment to fail. And I mean fail in the most positive sense. Making mistakes as part of the process to learning. The restaurant was that environment that we're looking for students to be able to actually learn in peace, is what I call it. They're learning in peace. Any other comments? Mm-hmm.
Because they were judged, they weren't able to speak, but even though one parent was fully deaf, the other one was hearing impaired, they were and I just thought that upsets me more than coming in from special ed for 10 years and going into
Yeah, and that's what we're talking about with really understanding our prejudice, bias, discrimination. Yeah. So from my special ed background, being a special education teacher, having an IEP, new student, on my caseload, I have an IEP, and I'm going to go talk to the general ed teacher with whom that child will be placed. And the range of reaction that I got, based on a piece of paper, not the value that child brings to my classroom in terms of difference and diversity. Those are the kinds of prejudices that I'm talking about. We have to bring those to the surface. Okay. I do want to then connect that to the classroom a little deeper. So in your note-taking guide, you also have space to write down your thoughts. We're going to just watch a couple minutes of this video. It's a pre-K class. It's Ms. Kungu. We're not going to judge her on any of the strategies she's using. What we're going to be looking for is what are some college and career readiness skills that Mrs. Kungu is teaching her students. So like I said, we're just going to watch maybe a minute and a half, but I want you to kind of identify what we just saw at Science Restaurant and then what that might look like in a preschool class. I think.
Children learn in a variety of ways. Using activities that are hands-on help the child to get to learn easily and more as they are interacting using their senses. Next, Jamaya. So there's physical movement which helps them as they're moving. Oh, there she got it. using their cognitive skills as they are thinking and manipulating the objects and the manipulatives.
I like what you're doing here.
When they are speaking and singing, that's their language that is already being built up in their vocabulary.
Because they are so big.
Their interaction with others, that also builds up their social skills and also emotional skills.
I got twinkle here.
Once you put all that together, it helps the child not only build in one domain of their development as a child, but it helps them to develop all as a holistic child.
Starting from left to right, we're going to order those numbers from 0 to 10. Now, let's look at those numbers. Can we look at those numbers? What's the first number? Who can tell me the first number? Yes, Jordan.
0.
The first number is 0. So may we have Imani go all the way next to Ramani. Good job. What's the second number? Who can tell us? Yes, Heaven.
Miss Kungo class, it is 1.
It is 1. Thank you for using that complete sentence. May we splash some fantasticness on Heaven? Let's go. Fantastic. Good job. Oh, they're going fishing. They're going fishing.
In the activity where the children got to fish, using their hands and using their fine motor skills, they're developing physically. They're also using their cognitive skills because they're getting to recognize the number and know where to move. And so those are some of the activities that hands-on helps them to learn.
Oh, did she do it? Yes, good job. And what number? Who can tell me what number that is? Let's see. Somebody who is sitting on their spot, like Deshaun. What number is this, Deshaun?
Miss Kungo class, that number is 7.
And what color is that, Deshaun?
Miss Kungo class, that color is purple.
Wonderful. Let's give him a silent clap. Now we're going to have our time now during centers. And how do we work in our centers?
So we'll come back to Ms. Kungu at the end of the presentation if we have time, but I could watch her forever. I want to be in her class, actually. I figured since UDL is in the title of the presentation, I should address UDL at some point. So we're going to get into Universal Design for Learning in the next 15, 20 minutes. So Universal Design for Learning is really a proactive lesson design framework. So before anything is implemented in the classroom, you are thinking about your lesson plan in very specific ways. And there's actually two main components of Universal Design for Learning. Usually in presentations, you will get information on the principles, right? It actually goes much deeper than that. So we're going to get to that. And it's also a way to identify those physical barriers that are presented by our instructional materials, okay? So I was in the presentation, the breakout presentation that was in here, I think, is it Diana? I was listening, I was sitting over to the side, but I was listening, and one of the things that she said related directly to learner variability. There is never a class that will be at the exact same place at the exact same time. It will not happen. It is predictable that the students will be all over the place in their learning. Expect it and plan for it. The other piece that I really love is that learners are context dependent. Learners do not profile across environments throughout the day in the same way. They have strengths, they have areas of improvement. There's also other factors that we have to consider, like time of day, their experience with the subject, that impact their ability to connect with the information. That's context dependent, okay? We have to take that into consideration. And here's an example of Universal Design for Learning. Please tell me everyone knows what that object is on the screen. I had somebody say, I have no idea what that is. There are actually accessibility issues. There are barriers with a Rubik's Cube. What population does not have access to who? Colorblind. Like, their experience with a Rubik's Cube is not the same as those that see color. What about individuals who have motor? Okay, so now we're identifying potential barriers. What if we took the color off and we put Braille? But wait, there's an issue. Now who doesn't have access? Everyone who doesn't know Braille, right? It totally loses its purpose. So what if we had a Rubik's Cube? And remember, we're trying to create accessibility for all. So now we have raised shapes, and we have colors. There are certain prerequisites that the student or the person using the Rubik's Cube would need to know. They need to know shapes. you know color. But for the most part, which of these three versions do people have the most accessibility for? The last one. That's what we're looking to do with our lesson design. Identify those barriers and work beyond them. You have the resources. These resources are on your Padlet. This is the main hub for everything UDL. It's CAST, the Center for Applied Special Technology. It's an amazing website. I would subscribe if I were you. They have a ton of free webinars that are amazing. There is also, for those in higher ed in the room, there is a website for higher ed called UDL on Campus. It's quite amazing. The guidelines, these are interactive guidelines. We're going to talk about the vocabulary around UDL. And then finally, another great resource that is free. It is the research base for Universal Design for Learning. Like I said, it's been around since the 90s. This came out about 5 or 6 years ago. You can order it online for $50, or you can download it for free. And it's based in Universal Design for Learning. You can take notes in it. You can have it read to you. You can watch videos that describe all of the content within. So this resource is actually based on UDL for accessibility. When you do your research, you will find this graphic. This is the old research. Same content, but they've redesigned it. And I'd like to take a moment and make sure everyone's looking at the screen, because the next animation took me from Washington, D.C. to San Francisco on a flight to actually create. Was it trial and results? I had about 1 million results on this one. So I'd like for everyone to watch, appreciate, and clap. Okay. And just because it is so beautiful, there it is again. What did you notice happened? What'd you notice? They moved the green column to the front and center. That is your engagement principle. Engagement, they wanted to call out as critical, foundational to everything else. Okay, that's the reason they did that. So you have a handout with the new version. Engagement, representation, and action expression. So we're going to do a quick demonstration of Universal Design for Learning. There we go. So if everyone would pull this chart out, it should be in your folders. And if you don't have it out, you won't have access to the activity. When you have it out, I would like for you to raise your pointer finger. That way I'll know you are ready to go. You should have the large chart. Okay, I'm going to teach a lesson, and you are going to be my students. On your chart, I would like you to point to a principle. Point to a checkpoint. Point to a guideline. Principle. What are you all waiting for? Principle. Guideline. Checkpoint. Principle. Come on, I don't see people pointing. I was just waiting for someone to tell me. I don't know what you are talking about, right? How many times do we do this in the classroom? Everyone in this room knows what a principle is. You know what a checkpoint is, and you know what a guideline is. You can define that. I just gave you directions to utilize that vocabulary within the context of this activity. Problem is, you didn't know the context of UDL in order to complete the assignment. It wasn't that you can't do it. It wasn't that I didn't give you the instruction necessary to complete that task. So let's do this again, okay? Now, we're going to open it up. And this is UDL, like I said, it's not a program. It's just understanding your teaching. So each column, and take notes. You have this electronically. Each column is a principle. There are 3 principles. The first is engagement. The second is representation. And then the third is action and expression. Within each principle, there are 3 guidelines. There are 9 guidelines in all. There are 3 in engagement, 3 in representation, and 3 in action and expression. Label your guidelines. Within each guideline, there are checkpoints. Checkpoints have bullets in front of them. There are multiple checkpoints within each guideline. There are 3 guidelines within each of the 3 principles. Graders. Okay, let's raise our fingers one more time. Point to a principle. Remember, a principle is a column. Point to a guideline. There are 3 guidelines in each principle. Point to any guideline. Point to a checkpoint. Multiple checkpoints within each guideline. Okay, we're going to go a little faster. Principle. Checkpoint. Guideline. Checkpoint. Principle. Guideline. Was this a different experience for you? Okay? The experience that changed did not change because you learned something. I taught it different. Okay? Sometimes the language we use and the way we teach vocabulary, and if you look at the very center guideline, right in the middle under representation, there's language and symbols. Math is a very specific language with symbols. They don't understand what you're talking about as a foundation, not going to be able to be successful. Those that have the access, that have the context, that have the experience, there's a difference in equity there. We got to bring them all to the surface. Okay, so those are your guidelines. If you go online, go into the Padlet, these are all linked that will link you to activities based within each one of those guidelines and checkpoints. Great resource, just came out about 3 weeks ago. Okay, I'm going to go through really, really quick each one of the 3 principles, give you a little bit of an activity to understand it, and then we will follow up. So we're going to start with engagement. Universal Design for Learning is research-based. It's been research-based for the past 25 years, and like I said, the new ebook puts it all into one place. When we talk about engagement, engagement is that fight or flight that's in the limbic system. Students are constantly assessing their environment as to whether it's good for them or bad for them. Back to special education, students with disabilities in the educational environment are fighting anxiety and fear and whether or not they are going to be called out on their disability. If you have high anxiety, it is directly disproportionate to their ability to cognate. They can't learn if they're anxious. Going back to that safe environment. That's what this is talking about. So on your guidelines, I would like you to write in that green column, in the engagement principle, I would like you to write social emotional. Everything that we talked about in that college and career adjective exercise, it's right here. You will see perseverance. You will see self-regulation. That's how we get at that foundational piece. Get the environment safe in order for them to learn. And this is just that integration of cognition and anxiety, emotion. And I was in a classroom, it was a 5th grade classroom, and teachers always asked, they're like, how do you teach self-regulation? So this teacher was doing an awesome job using paint chips. And this is what the paint chip looked like on their desk. They're free at Home Depot, in case you're wondering. On the left side, that's your cognitive, that's your thinking. So the students were self-assessing using Post-it notes, moving up and down throughout the day. They were self-assessing whether or not they have no idea what the content is, no experience, I'm in the midst of learning, or I know it so well I can teach it. So the teacher was receiving formative assessment information. The students were self-evaluating. On the other side is I'm resistant, willing, and bring it on. Those Post-its were going up and down all day. Some kids go out for recess and they come back ready to learn. Some kids go out to recess and they are, excuse the term, whacked out. Okay? So this was just one way to teach it. Like I said, I'll give you an activity for each one of the principles. Representation. This is I love the meme. Representation is the way the students receive information. Okay? We have to provide multiple ways for students to access the information that I'm trying to teach. So from your perspective right now as a participant, the way I designed this presentation had better result in some level of understanding of UDL, right? I can do it in multiple ways. If I don't hit the target, if I just lecture to you, there will be less understanding. If I say, here's a book, read the book, everyone, there'll be less understanding. The interaction piece, the visuals, the videos, the note-taking guide, different ways for you to access so that the most people, like the Rubik's Cube, are able to access the information. This is the student's receptive language. So within our brain, we're looking at the temporal lobe. In the temporal lobe is how we make sense of information, how we understand patterns. This is critical to math instruction. This is a Padlet, another activity. A Padlet is just a way to represent through a diagram. You can upload videos, pictures, you can do colors to help create patterns and understandings that students understand the information that's coming into them. Padlets are awesome, okay? And then means of action and expression. Action and expression, critical to this process. Ooh. So action and expression is the way that we plan. If you look at that blue principle, action expression, that's executive functions. Put a big old star by the guideline that says executive function. That trips up more students than we even know. Are they able to organize, prioritize? Are they able to use novel situation information based on past experiences? Action expression is, and I'd like you to write this in the principle, two things. That's expressive language, and it's also the verb. It's the verb. Students have to do something, right? Okay? We'll come back to that. And then a Padlet, I can use a Padlet to represent this principle too. What if I said to students, create a Padlet? What did you learn about this subject? You create the Padlet and express yourself through a Padlet. I can use it to represent, or I can change it and use it for students to show that they understand. Okay, we're going to skip ahead a little bit. I talked about the second area, okay? This is the deeper part of universal design for learning. Goals, assessment methods, and materials. Goals are the objectives we set. This is the proactive lesson planning phase of universal design for learning. There's a couple pieces. It's in this order that we lesson plan. First, we set the lesson objective. Then we determine what assessments are necessary for us to show, or the students to show, that they understand the concept in multiple ways, not by a letter grade. What are the methods we're going to use to teach it, and what materials that create accessibility, what materials, manipulatives will they need in front of them? Pretty simple. So going through each one really quickly, I want to make sure that people understand in developing a lesson objective, you have to separate the means from the end. We're not just grading the product. We're giving them multiple ways to develop a product, whatever that is, to show that they understand. They're two different things, how they get there and what it is, based on the verb. Okay? Verbs open up accessibility or verbs close accessibility. Here's a Common Core standard. Tell and write time in hours and half hours using analog and digital clocks. Does anybody see a barrier with those verbs? How do you define tell? Is it oral language? What if I could show time using a manipulative, using a model, using a clock, pointing? There are other ways to tell than just oral language. If we only give that one option, we're creating barriers. What about writing? Other ways? Same thing, both expressive skills, but they also, by virtue of the verb, create barriers, okay? Assessment, the one thing I want to make has to be construct relevant. And I'm going to go back to that same goal, that same lesson standard. How do I know if I'm assessing the student's ability to tell time or communicate orally effectively? Two different skills. They're not construct relevant. Okay? Just keep that in mind. And then we also have to address the methods that we use. Is it co-teaching? Is it group work? And then finally, materials. Okay? Those are the four components of UDL and lesson planning. If it's only through books, then we've created inequity for those that don't learn that way. And then back to Ms. Kungu, what I'd like you to do, I know we don't have time today, but when you get back and you have time in your classroom, in your educational day, take a look at this video, and I want you to kind of identify what UDL strategies Ms. Kungu uses. And it's there for you. 1:45, right on time. I appreciate your attention, and I'll be around the rest of the day if you want to have a conversation about access and equity. So thank you.